Russian drone strike on a passenger train carrying hundreds of people in Ukraine's Odessa region on Thursday killed 2 people.
Europe swelters under a fresh heat wave, putting strain on hospitals, water supplies and the economy.
Nigel Farage is vying to reclaim his parliament seat following last month's resignation as he faces unorthodox opposition in the Clacton-on-Sea by-election. Japan slammed Russia over what it deemed a provocative move after President Vladimir Putin made his first visit to the disputed Kuril Islands on Thursday.
A Russian drone strike on a passenger train in Ukraine's Odessa region on Thursday killed 2 people. The victims of the attack were 2 crew members, the driver and an assistant. None of the passengers were harmed. In a post on X, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said hundreds of people were on board the train, accusing Russia of targeting the locomotive, which it would have known was carrying only civilians. It is not the first time Russia has targeted a passenger train, as Moscow ramped up its attacks on Ukraine's civilian and critical infrastructure in recent months. A recent report by the United Nations revealed civilian deaths in Ukraine reached a record high in July, the monthly highest since May 2022. The report found at least 437 civilians were killed that month, a 30% increase compared to June and a 70% increase compared to July the year before. Ukraine, on its end, has also ramped up its campaign against Russia's critical and military infrastructure in recent months. Ukrainian media reported that on Thursday a fire broke out at a major oil refinery in Russia's Bashkortostan, as well as a wild berries warehouse nearby.
Large parts of Western Europe are sweltering once again this Thursday as another heat wave grips France and Britain. France has 80 of its 101 departments under orange alert, with temperatures there expected to peak between 38 and 40 degrees. More than 40,000 people are already dealing with water cut-offs as officials call drinking water access their top priority. The government says this summer's heat waves could cost the country up to €15 billion. Across the channel, forecasters say temperatures could hit 38 degrees Celsius in central and southeast England, just shy of the August record set back in 2003. It's the 5th heat wave to hit the UK this summer, and the heat is taking its toll. The Royal College of Nursing says staff have collapsed from heat exhaustion in hospitals that simply aren't built for these temperatures. Most of the country is now in drought, piling pressure onto water supplies. Scientists say human-caused climate change is driving these increasingly frequent and intense heat waves across the continent.
Standing 8 hours per day in an archaeological site with no shade, or leading a city tour by 30 degrees in the midst of the touristic season, and while Europe is facing record-breaking temperatures, several tourist guides warned they are on the front line during heat waves, and they faced the consequences. Last summer, a 56-year-old guide died after collapsing while leading a visit of the Colosseum in Rome in scorching heat.
Cet après-midi, je vous en parle même pas. On a été à Pérouge, qui est une petite ville médiévale là, qui est au nord-est de Lyon, et il fait plus de 40 degrés au soleil, enfin, c'est assez compliqué.
The French guide says while self-employed tourist guides may ask their customers to cancel or postpone the visit because of the heat, it is often not an option for guides working for intermediaries, since the visits are sometimes booked well in advance.
La plupart du temps, on travaille pour une agence, un tour opérateur, un croisiériste, enfin, ça peut être très varié, comme je disais avant. Et là, c'est eux qui choisissent, très clairement, et la plupart du temps, c'est pas annulé. Mais ça arrive.
Instead of cancelling a visit, some of his colleagues have, for instance, asked their employers to turn a bike tour into a bus tour, or to replace a walking tour of the city by a visit of an air-conditioned museum. Gabriel says these changes are also in the interest of the visitors, as most of his customers are above 60 years old and some do not support the heat. Meanwhile, while the UK is set to face its hottest summer on record, the head of training for the European Federation of Tourist Guide Associations says sites should extend their opening hours to allow early and late visits during the coolest part of the day.
In Greece, a lot of museums and open-air sites open very early in the morning, and they remain open until 8, 9 o'clock in the evening. So people can visit at times which are more comfortable rather than in the midday sun.
Themis also encourages museums and sites to build covers for groups to wait in the shade while queuing to enter or when stopping for explanations. Other solutions include distributing water bottles, increasing the number of public water fountains, and installing misters to cool visitors down. While heat waves are said to become more intense and more frequent due to climate change, visitors could also favor a trip in May or September rather than at the height of summer.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said Washington is in control of the strategic Strait of Hormuz and will keep it even as transit through the arterial waterway fell to a one-week low. Writing on his social media platform on Wednesday, Trump hailed the U.S. naval blockade, describing it as, quote, wall of steel. His claim follows an earlier one made on Tuesday as diplomatic efforts to end the conflict and fully reopen the strait have continued to stall. However, Iran has again rejected Trump's latest claims. According to a post on X by Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority, the Strait of Hormuz, quote, remains blocked and will not be opened until Iran's conditions are accepted. Amid their contradictory claims, data from a trade intelligence firm revealed that maritime traffic via the Strait of Hormuz was close to a 3-month low. Only 13 ships passed across the strait on Tuesday, around 90% fewer than the daily average of 130 prior to the US and Israel attacking Iran on February 28, after which Tehran effectively closed the strait.
Polls opened on Thursday morning in Essex in southeast England as voters cast their ballots to decide Nigel Farage's future as an MP for the coastal town of Clacton-on-Sea. Polling stations opened at 7 a.m. local time and are set to close at 10 p.m., where vote counting is expected to begin immediately after, and first results arriving early on Friday. A record 34 candidates are standing in the by-election, which was triggered after the far-right Reform UK leader Nigel Farage resigned as an MP in July amid scrutiny over his finances. Farage is widely expected to retain the Eastern Essex seat, which voted overwhelmingly for Brexit in the 2016 referendum he helped engineer. His main rival is Count Binface, who dresses with a grey trash can over his head, wearing a cape and silver armor. According to a Survation poll, Binface, who has captured global media attention, could possibly snatch a fifth of the votes. Close to 80,000 people are registered to vote in this by-election, but analysts expect turnout to be significantly lower than usual, given the lack of traditional candidates from the ruling Labour Party and the Conservatives. Russia's President Vladimir Putin visited the far eastern Kuril Islands for the first time on Thursday, prompting strong protests from Japan, which also claims the territory. Japan's top diplomat Toshimitsu Motegi slammed the visit, stressing that the islands, which Tokyo calls the Northern Territories, are inherently theirs, both historically and under international law. Russian state media posted videos of Putin on Iturup, the largest of the disputed islands, visiting a school, a hospital, and a fish processing complex where he sampled caviar. The Russian leader's stop came after a brief visit to Sakhalin, a nearby Russian island where the Navy was conducting drills. In Sakhalin, Putin held a meeting on, quote, ensuring the security of Russia's eastern borders. The Kuril archipelago was seized by Russia in August 1945, just days after the Soviet Union declared war on Japan in the dying stretch of World War II. The mineral-rich islands have grown in strategic importance to the Kremlin, providing them with military bases and fishing grounds. The islands were previously home to some 17,000 Japanese, whom Russia deported shortly after annexation, and are today home to around 20,000 Russian citizens. Relations between Moscow and Tokyo have remained sour since, especially after Russia sought closer ties with China and North Korea, whom Tokyo has had turbulent relations with. The last visit by a Kremlin head of state to the islands was back in 2010, by then-President Dmitry Medvedev, who later revisited several times as prime minister.
They wouldn't have missed the show for the world. Millions of people wearing special glasses gathered across Spain Wednesday in the search of the best spot to enjoy the most important solar eclipse in Europe since 1999. The sun, the moon and the earth aligned, briefly plunging part of Spain, Portugal, Greenland and Iceland into darkness.
Ha sido mi primera, no sé si mi última vez, pero una experiencia sobrecogedora. Creo que es la palabra, único.
Bueno, ha sido espectacular. Es la primera vez que veo un eclipse total. Había visto uno del 99% y de verdad que no tiene absolutamente nada que ver. Merece la pena al 100%.
Totality, when the moon completely covers the sun's light, was expected to last less than 2 minutes and a half, reaching its maximum duration off Iceland's west coast and dwindling to a minute in Portugal and Spain. In other parts of Europe, spectators enjoyed a partial solar eclipse.
El primero de los fenómenos del conocido como trío de eclipses se está desvaneciendo ahora mismo a mis espaldas en el horizonte, pero los españoles tendrán otras dos oportunidades de contemplar fenómenos similares. Primero, el 2 de agosto de 2027, un eclipse solar total como el que acabamos de comprobar, y otro el 26 de enero de 2028, pero en esta ocasión solar anular. Javier Iñiguez desde la Fortaleza Califal de Gormaz en Soria para Euronews.